Hi, I'm Bybreen Samuels and welcome back to another episode of Soul Stirring Astrology. Well, the major change that's going on this week is that the sun moves into Scorpio. So it leaves its kind of tranquil world of Libra where we were facing each other, dealing with each other in a really harmonious way. So that was us with another. And now we're moving into more of a connection with ourselves, because when we're dealing with Pluto, we're dealing with change that happens through choice or through coercion. And wherever Pluto shows up, it's about revealing what lies beneath the surface. It's about challenging us to look at our beliefs, the statements that we talk about and think about that rule our life, the unconscious views that we have. And it really is about provoking a psychological death. So therefore, it's more about us learning to let go of the things that no longer serve us. So an example of this is that we have our ego, and it's our core identity. It's our conscious way of being in the world. And the ego really does everything to preserve everything that is going on in life. And so there's a tension now that exists between the ego, which is about self-preservation, versus Pluto, which is about the only way to really preserve yourself is to let yourself free. So it's about breaking free, breaking down the barriers and the walls that the ego has built up as a way to reveal itself in the world. And so essentially, Pluto is about helping us to re-identify ourselves in a way that's far more inclusive beyond what the ego has already structured for us. So, for example, we may have close associations with our identity that's tied up with our job, or, holding a particular status in life, or our wealth, or a particular philosophy or view or religion. And Pluto is about overriding this very fixed sense of the self-image. Now, Pluto is associated with Scorpio because it rules Scorpio. And so the sun in Scorpio can show itself from an identity that reveals itself through different images. So there's the image of the phoenix and the snake, the scorpion and the ego. And so when we're dealing with issues to do with Scorpio and Pluto, they really are about representing decay and death, change and renewal. So you want to experience and think about the sun going through Scorpio as a cycle. We have to die in order to be reborn, in order to transform into something else. Now, when we're connecting to the different images that Scorpio and Pluto can show up as, it relates to the different types of deaths, the psychological deaths that we will go through. So when we're operating at this really base level of emotions, we're dealing with the snake and the scorpion. And so the snake is about, shedding the skin in order for your new self to come through. And the scorpion is the one that always has the sting in the tail. And so if you're always reacting from the position of your feelings, you're being dominated by your feelings, then you're acting from a place of your base instincts and you're being controlled by your moods. So you need to be mindful this month as you're going through this Scorpio cycle, not to allow your moods to dominate your expressions in the world. So an example of this is the mythological story of the frog and the scorpion. And so the scorpion wanted the frog to cross over the river. And the frog agrees and he says, "Okay, scorpion, I'm happy to do this as long as you don't sting me." So halfway across the river, the scorpion decides that he is going to sting the frog. So he stings the frog, they start drowning, and the frog turns and says, "Scorpion, why did you do that?" And the scorpion replied, "Because I felt like it." So that's a classic example where, you can be driven by your heightened emotions and whereby you're actually behaving in a way where you're spiting and hurting people around you. So that's when you're operating at this lower level of the Scorpion Plutonic energy. The next level is about dealing with the eagle transformation. And so this is about, having a sense of purpose and meaning in your life, and you gain that through the external environment. So that could come through, your relationships or causes that you follow and promote and believe in. It could be about a philosophy that you hold. It's really also tied up with your lofty ideals in the world. So you might be espousing all of this, but you still have that sting in your tail. And so if you're threatened around any of these kind of external identities, you will attack. And so here you have, it's really about striking at the issue is about your core identity. And so because you're being served by these identities, so you might be really passionate about pursuing justice and truth, but actually you lose sight of everything else. So you're lacking a sense of balance in terms of how you show up in the world. Beyond this level of transformation, we move into the Phoenix, and this is where there's been a complete rebirth after decay and death. And so when we're dealing with the symbol of the Phoenix, it's about immortality. So the eagle's passion dies, it burns out, and it reduces itself to ashes. And as a result of this enables your new sense of being, your new identity to soar in the world. And this is where the phoenix rises from the ashes. And so it's, in order to rise, you have to grow, you have to let go of the attachments, and to learn to be who you truly are. So these are the different levels of transformation that can take place when you're going through this Sun in Scorpio, Sun ruled by Pluto cycle. So essentially Pluto will tear down the ego, and it will force all of us to re-engage or reconnect with our true essence. And it's also a confrontation about untapped potential, as well as confronting demons. And so Pluto is going through the sign of Capricorn, and so that's connected with so Capricorn could be in the second house, because it's still going through this Virgo energy that's about to move in, sorry, not Virgo, Libra, that's moving into Scorpio. And so the second house is ruled by Saturn, i.e. when Pluto is in Capricorn, it's ruled by Saturn. And Saturn is also about how you show up in the world, your position, your status. It's about your resources. And so, for example, with Pluto going through Capricorn, it could be a great time for you to connect with your untapped potential, your untapped talents, and using these particular talents in a way that's going to regenerate your resources and your wealth. So it really is a beneficial time. So that sets the context in terms of this Sun going through Scorpio and Pluto. And so we've left the world in terms of Libra and its sense of balance. We're now plunging underneath the surface. Another aspect that's been made this month in connection with Pluto is that we have Mercury squaring Pluto. So Pluto is always about, it gives power to whatever it touches. And so we're dealing with the square between our ability and our sense of communication, our communication style, and that's in conflict with the power of Pluto. And so what Pluto is encouraging, not even encouraging really, forcing Mercury to do, is to plunge into the underworld, to plunge into subjects and to give it depth and meaning, and bringing what's in the underworld or what's in the unconscious and bringing it to life. So there's a strong desire to delve deeper into the inner world and the outer realities. Now, don't forget that Mercury is the communicator between different realms. It's the messenger between the conscious world as well as the unconscious world. And so there's a deep desire here to get to the bottom of things. And so Pluto's encouraging all of us to use our intellect to explore issues. And it could be a great time to actually study something that you're really passionate about, that you can give depth and meaning to. It's about really looking at those obscure areas in life. It could be about discovering secrets and probing those secrets and looking at mysteries. A great time if you're interested in pursuing investigative journalism, for example. A great example of somebody who's doing this on a global scale is somebody called Vani Hari, and she is known as the Food Babe, and she's a phenomenal investigative food journalist that exposes corruptions and the less beneficial actions of the food industry. So it could be a great time to master a field of study, and in doing so you'll be able to gain power and control. Now, we're dealing with the issue of power and Pluto, but it's about being conscious enough to use the power constructively and not destructively. And so therefore it's not about gaining power so that you can use that power to corrupt or blackmail other people. That's certainly not the way to go. It's about using your knowledge and your information to empower yourself and others in a very profound way. It's also a time whereby it's about your ability, increasing your ability to influence other people. Now, we're dealing here with a square, and so therefore you may be challenged around your views and your perspectives, and therefore you're led to convince and persuade other people to your point of view. And an external example of this is the recent conversations that the church is having with the government. And so here we have a great example of Pluto square Mercury. And so we've got the church using Mercury. And the bishops recently have criticised the government's handling of Syrian refugees. And what they're saying is actually it's inadequate for this Tory government to only accommodate 20,000 Syrian refugees. It's an inappropriate response. And so therefore we have the church using its powers of communication to criticise the government, which is the state, around its handling of fellow human beings. And so therefore the church is using Mercury in a very humanitarian way. It's about promoting the trials, the pains and the tribulations of Syrian refugees, and wanting to do so in a very equitable, balanced and humane way, because Mercury is in Libra. And so that's a great example of showing how it's working in the outside world. And so personally, as I said, it could be a time where your opinions and your views are being challenged by others. Another aspect to Pluto is that we have Pluto trining Venus. And so here, when we're dealing with Venus, Venus is always associated with relationships, creativity and values. And it's a trine. So we've got the power still of Pluto, and that's about, enhancing this sense of love within relationships, creativity and values. And so when we're dealing with Pluto trine Venus in terms of relationships, Pluto will be testing the strength of a relationship. It will be really forcing you to look at, are you really happy within your relationship? Is there anything wrong? It could be within the area of sex and sexual problems, because Pluto rules that area. And so if there are sexual problems that are going on in a relationship, the trine will show it's an opportunity for you to explore that and to deepen and grow as a result of this. And so therefore here Pluto acts to purify your marriage or your relationship, and so therefore it goes through a level of rebirth. Pluto here could also show deep-seated differences in the relationship, and now could be a time for you to explore that within your relationship. And even with the best intentions, having discussed it, both of you may realize that the relationship needs to come to an end. It's not going to survive. And so wherever Pluto shows up, the change is about, you can do this change through choosing to do it or being forced to do it. Other areas where you might meet this change taking place could be around close relatives. They may be going through a hard time, and so therefore you're being put through a test in terms of how you show up in terms of these relationships. And it could be really a time where if you're being threatened in a relationship, or threatened because of the fear of losing the relationship, that sense of rejection obviously comes to the surface, but it also could be about reactivating rejections that you have experienced in the past or from childhood, because we're dealing with Pluto and it's plunging into your past experiences. And so now could be a good time whereby you could explore meditation or therapy to help you overcome some of those challenges that you experience. It could be a time, because we're dealing with this trine between the Venus and Pluto, that you could meet somebody who you're really strongly attracted to and form an intense relationship. And it could be the type of relationship that enables you to bring out other aspects of yourself that have not been revealed in previous relationships. So it could be for the betterment of who you are. It helps you to grow and develop because it's got this trine energy between you. Another aspect of Venus and Pluto is around creativity, and so changes that could take place. So for example, if you're a non-fiction writer, you could find that you're turning your attention to writing screenplays or poems. There could be a real deepening in terms of your artistic inspiration, and an increase around that, and really looking at how you can expand yourself as a creative being. Interestingly enough, the London Screenwriters Festival is on this weekend. That's October the 24th and 25th, where there are delegates coming from all over the world, and there's going to be about 150 different seminars taking place, all exploring the wonders and the beauty and the depth and the expansion of creativity to do with screenwriting. So that could be for the TV or for screen or for the web, film as well. It could also be a time where emotions are stirred, and so as creators we could be really absorbed in a theme that we're exploring, and it helps to rejuvenate our creativity in the world. Venus Pluto here is also connected with financial worth, and so Venus is associated with money and wealth, and so here, because it's with Pluto, there could be a change in financial status and bringing about extreme wealth. There could also be a shift in our values, and so, you know, if you've been somebody who has held an entrenched view around something, and that view has now outlived you and you outlived it, it's a time for it to die. And in this death obviously brings a level of insecurity, but you know, with this transit that's taking place, this connection between these two planets will give you a greater sense of clarity over what it is that you truly do value and what you love. So when we're looking at our values, they also dictate the choices that we make in our life. And so if one of your values is around freedom, and so therefore your choices now could open up whereby you want to expand them, and that brings you even more freedom within your life. So that sort of wraps up the connection between Venus and Pluto. One other thing I want to say about this is that this is a fantastic transit and a connection between these two planets, because what it is doing is bringing us the opportunity to give ourselves greater self-love. So that's obviously very important. You know, self-love comes first before you can love anything or anybody else. So I want to turn now to a connection that's going on between Mercury and we've got Mercury opposite Uranus over in Aries. So Mercury's in Libra and Uranus is in Aries, and there's an opposition. And so here we have Mercury being stressed again, because it was stressed with Pluto in terms of the conflict that can take place, arguments that might arise, and then it's now in opposition to Uranus. So the positive things around this is that this opposition can bring you an opportunity to gain fresh perspectives and thoughts and insights. And what it may enable you to do is to bring resolutions to old problems that you have been experiencing. It's a great time to follow your intuition. But it's an opposition, so you need to be mindful of any chaotic or inconsistent thoughts that could undermine the harmonious way you're trying to communicate, because you've got this Mercury that's in Libra. And so wherever Uranus shows up, it's about unexpected changes, and we're dealing with the mind here, so it's about inconsistencies. And this could lead to explosive arguments, so just be really careful about this. And a way that you can kind of handle and begin to channel some of that surplus energy is if you take up, maybe meditation or yoga or some type of sport where you can get this excess energy out. It's also it's a great time for original thinking that can lead to breakthroughs in your work or your thoughts, or aspects of your personal life or your business. It could be a great time for product development or creativity in your writing. And so examples of this we've seen in the series that was on Breaking Bad was very inventive in terms of how it joined the themes together. And then if you take How to Get Away with Murder, that's another example of casting and characterization. And so where you have this Uranus and where you have Mercury, it's a great time for unconventional innovation and invention in your life. Some people might experience you as being radical or unconventional in your ideas. And so where you've got this Mercury and Pluto square, it's about you having to convince them that they're valuable ideas that you want, that can be expressed positively in the world and can uplift other people. What else have we got going on? I think just a couple of other things. We have the North Node, and the North Node is sextiling Saturn. So the North Node is in Libra, it's sextiling Saturn in Sagittarius. And so this is a beautiful connection that helps you to focus and to commit to this new direction in your life. And it's going to be based on your own sound principles and philosophies. And so therefore, looking at all of the themes, we've got power. Power is showing itself because we've got the sun that's entered into Scorpio, and that's ruled by Pluto. And wherever Pluto shows up, he is about power and domination and control, but how to use that in an effective and positive way. And how you are beginning to integrate power within your life, how you use it in a very positive and healing way, because you've got this Venus with Pluto, and that's about self-love. And when you're dealing with power again, you can also look at the placement of Mars, which Mars is in Virgo, and that's equally trining Pluto. And so if you're involved in situations that may bring about conflict, it's about how you assert yourself in a way that you still get your voice and your opinions heard, but you don't have to do it in this overly aggressive way. And so with Venus there alongside with Mars, it's about balancing that masculine and feminine energy. Venus here is soothing Mars, it's softening Mars. It's about the invitation for us to move from the very yang masculine way of getting our point of view across into the more feminine energy. Now, as much as Mars is into assertion, Mars is also connected with open enemies, and Mars likes to, when he is involved in a fight, wants to fight fairly. But you've got to be careful that you're not using your Mars and your Pluto in a way that's about emotional manipulation. And we may have learnt this negative way of being through, family experiences, because, there's conflicts within families and family dynamics, but they're usually covert in how they can come about. And so what may happen is that you have absorbed this kind of covert way of operating in order to get your way, or in order for your point of view to be heard and understood. And so here's an opportunity to kind of transform how you engage in dialogue that enables you to be heard, for other people to be heard, and not to approach your world in a way that hurts other people. And I want to share the myth around Hercules. And so Hercules, he was the one who wounded Chiron with his arrow that he used to try and kill the Hydra. And the Hydra is a 9-headed monster that lives in the cave, lives in this swampy cage. And so what Hercules did here was that he showed up and he wanted to kill the Hydra. And he went about it initially by, firing his arrows with poison. And it went into the Hydra, but it didn't kill the Hydra. And then he tried to club the Hydra, and each time he clubbed the Hydra and one of the heads died, 9 more would grow back. And so here was Hercules exerting his energy and his aggression to overcome and overpower. And so what actually happened, the lesson that he learnt here was actually, I need to surrender. Yeah, so Hercules surrendered to the Hydra, and in surrendering he realized, I can overcome the Hydra. Instead of clubbing the Hydra to death, what I can do is bring the Hydra to the light. And it's in bringing the Hydra to the surface, into the consciousness of the world, that the Hydra's power diminished. And so therefore that analogy can be applied to how we show up. We don't have to take a hammer to crack a nut. There are other ways in which we can assert ourselves. And also in the assertion, we've got to be careful that we're not wounding people through what we say and how we behave. Because here, where Hercules, he had this arrow and it had the poison from the Hydra on it, and he met Chiron, and he and Chiron were in conversation, and he accidentally wounded Chiron with this arrow that had the poison on it. And so what happened to Chiron was that the poison could not be extracted, and so therefore that's how Chiron ended up as the wounded healer. And so what we're dealing with here, the lesson here from this myth, is about in our assertions, in our connections, in our desire to be heard and to be seen, it's about how we temper those aggressions and avoid hurting other people. But more importantly, is how we avoid hurting ourselves by internalizing this anger that can be very destructive. So quite a lot to take on board this week in terms of how we use power and how we show up in the world. And the quote I want to leave you with this week is one from Gandhi. And he said, "The day the power of love overrules the love of power, the world will know peace." So I wish you a very peaceful time until we speak again. Bye.